Broadway, listen to the Broadway beat. Broadway makes you want to move your feet. Everybody's tapping into everything that's happening on Broadway beats. Broadway beats. Broadway beats. Broadway beat.
Hello, I'm Richard Ridge, and welcome to Broadway Beat, our weekly half-hour behind-the-scenes look at the very best of a New York theater on Broadway and beyond. This week we bring you a sneak peek at the new Broadway musical Good Vibrations, which features the songs of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. But we start things off at the opening night celebration for the New York production of the play Democracy, which recently wrapped up its critically acclaimed sold-out production in London. We'll chat with playwright Michael Frayn, director Michael Blakemore, and members of its stellar cast, including James Naughton, Richard Thomas, and Robert Prosky. Democracy follows the astonishing career of Willy Brandt, played by Mr. Naughton, the first left-of-center chancellor in West Germany in 40 years, and his downfall at the hands of his trusted assistant, Gunther Guillaume, played by Mr. Thomas, who is secretly spying on Brandt for the notorious East German Stasi.
You know, there's something you and I have in common, Herr Chancellor. You have a son called Peter. I have a son called Pierre, 14. Somewhat different political views, though. Great lefty, you're Peter, I know. Every time you open the newspapers, there he is, out on the streets again, protesting against his dad's government. You must feel very, very proud of him. Whereas my Pierre is a great fan of yours. Plastered Vote Willy stickers all over the house.
In bed by now. You never see him.
On Sundays. I try to make it up to him then, our Sunday morning ritual. We jump in the car and drive out to the airport to fetch the papers, wander around the airport together, chat, don't know what about, watch the planes taking off. Imagine we're on one of them, lifting away through the clouds, up into the sunlight. Where are we going? No idea. Somewhere warm. I mean, it's very clear on the page that the multiple duties that the role has. I mean, the conflict of the character, which is obvious when you see the story. I mean, his ambivalence about the job he's doing and the man that he's spying on, who he is spying on, but also admires, and his identification with him, the projection that occurs, you know, frequently, I think, in that circumstance. So to play back and forth, being the spy, reporting to Michael Kumsty, my handler, but there's another duty in the role as well, which is to tell the story to the audience. And it's really through Guillaume's journey that the audience has told the story. So there's a little bit of an obligation to make things clear and to help focus for the audience who everybody is and what's going on. So it's complex, but you know, that's so rewarding.
You have such a wonderful working relationship on stage with James Naughton's character.
Yeah, well, we go way back. Jimmy and I, this is our fourth play that we've done together, and we love being on stage together. We're so different in every way, physically, vocally. It's a terrific match for us, and we just love to talk to each other on stage. And the rest of the guys, man, it's a wonderful. I've worked with a whole bunch of these guys before, and I'll tell you, if you have to stand around on stage watching people act all night, it's good to have guys like this to watch.
You know, you work with so many incredible directors in your career,
yes, I
and of
have.
course now you're working with Michael Blakemore. What was the rehearsal process like?
Well, we were incredibly lucky. From the very first day of rehearsal, we worked on the set. They built the set in the theater, and our very first reading of the play, first day of rehearsal, we were working on the set, which is really unheard of. Sometimes you block and you do it in a theater, but never on a set that's already built. That's number one. And then number two, you know, he'd done the play, so he was setting it on us, but he also gave us a great deal of freedom to define the characters in our own way, to put our own stamp on the roles. But he's just extraordinary. He's so articulate, so clear, so even-handed with the whole company, and makes you feel, by the time, it's extraordinary how he takes you right up to the point of opening and makes you feel so secure, and then just lets you go. It's just beautiful.
You do a lot of stuff, and then every once in a while you get one that just, the process is fabulous. Michael Blakemore he's one of the two best directors I've ever worked with, and I've had the pleasure of working with him twice. He also directed City of Angels, so it was a delight. He has a lot of patience. No detail is too small, and he's got a great sense of humor. That's a good combination, and it's a great company. I mean, we'd be happy if we had a couple of women in the company, but there aren't any women. But we got 10 great guys, and we all have a good time.
what a complex man you play. Talk about Willy Brandt and what you knew of him before you started this and what you liked about him with going into the piece.
I didn't know that much about him. I remember him, but I didn't know, very much. The thing I like about Willy Brandt is that he was a really good heart. He was doing things for the right reasons. He was a selfless politician. He was a fierce defender of the free world when he was mayor of Berlin, of West Berlin. He was with JFK in those famous, let them come to Berlin speech days. And he did something that was significant and that Michael Frayn had caught because Michael was there in the early 70s. And he, I think, probably made it easier for Glasnost and Perestroika and the collapse of the Berlin Wall. All of which are great things. And it was not easy for him to do because it was not popular at the time. He did something without focus groups and it was not popular, and he did something because it was right. And it was huge and forward-thinking. Now, what confronts us? Two Germanys, broken apart like the old shattered masonry. This is the material out of which we have to build the world we're going to be living in tomorrow. This is the only material we possess. The two Germanys, as they actually are, riddled with doubts and suspicions on both sides. If the building we're creating is going to stay up, we have to make sure that this fragile stuff will bear the load we're placing upon it. We have somehow to find ways for the doubtful and the fearful on both sides to accept what we're doing.
Billy's dream, life without conflict.
Conflict resolved.
Irreconcilables reconciled.
Even the irreconcilables inside our own party.
Well, the first challenge is always to really get to know your text and to respond to those very early ideas you have when you first read it. And it seemed to me what Michael had done is it was rather like without being sort of visual, it was rather like a film script in as much as it was a succession of very brief scenes, not one of which overstayed its welcome. There was not a line of dialogue that wasn't absolutely necessary, although it's a rather wordy play. And the idea was to do a production in which it flowed like a film, in which there was no lugging on of furniture, there was no breaks between scenes, it was scene, 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 scene. So that, in a way, one hopefully would sort of mesmerize the audience with the speed and the elegance of the staging, hopefully.
Well, I first got to know Germany in the 1970s during the years of Brandt's government. So when he fell from power, when he resigned because the spy had been found in his office, I took note, and it's a very painful story. This is a story of personal betrayal. And I've been thinking for years how to do a play about post-war Germany, how Germany recovered from the disaster of Nazism. And I couldn't see how to focus it until I remembered the story of Brandt and Guillaume. And it seemed to encapsulate something about the complexity of the political process and the complexity of human beings, because Guillaume was plainly a very complex person. He was both serving Brandt very faithfully as his personal assistant and seemed to love Brandt and revere him. But at the same time, he was working for the East Germans to spy on Brandt and was undermining him. But Brandt, also a very complex man, did a great thing, persuaded Germany to accept a reconciliation with the East. Very difficult political achievement. But at the same time, he had terrible weaknesses, very depressive, drank too much, too fond of the ladies. And also serious weaknesses like difficulty in confronting people and in making decisions. Serious weaknesses in a politician.
Were there any changes? Did you make any changes to the play when you brought it to America?
We decided that since these are Germans in the play, and it's just a convention that they're speaking English, that in London it was right they were speaking British English, and in America they should naturally be speaking American English. So we did all the standard changes of gasoline for petrol and so forth.
Well, one of the themes that seems to fascinate Michael Frayn is the unknowability of our motivations. You know, what goes on inside of each of us, and in this play he uses the idea of democracy as the metaphor for that. That in a democracy you have all these different voices trying to negotiate, trying to talk to each other. But inside us, he says, we all have different motivations, which confuse us, which we can't track, which we, you know, he has a line in this play where he says, you never know which voice is going to speak until you open your mouth. And it was a similar theme in Copenhagen, that, you know, I played the character of Heisenberg, who's most famous for the uncertainty principle, and it was about the uncertainty that is inside all of us. And somehow or other, Michael Frayn manages, while plumbing those questions about what our motivations are, he manages to kind of sort of expose some really tender and moving and deeply true things about what it is to be human, which of course is the function of drama, and he's one of the best.
What is it like having the living playwright in the room? So rarely you're given that opportunity with shows that you do now. What is that like?
Well, it's fantastic. There is, of course, because this isn't a play in development, because it's a play that, you know, has already been very successfully produced, we're not constantly going to him, you know, sort of negotiating things. There was a certain amount of talking about things that might be changed, so that anything that was crashingly British, anything that would be hard to get for an American audience, not just a different usage, but anything that was hard to understand, he agreed to change very willingly. But there's such an etiquette about approaching the playwright, you know, and in fact it was funny because Michael Frayn flew in and was sitting in the back of the theater one night, and we were all sort of hovering close to him, and I went over and we were chatting, and Michael Blakemore sort of was standing just a few feet away, and he raised an eyebrow and he said, "The director gets insecure when the actor approaches the playwright." So you've got to be careful.
You know, I didn't know whether I was going to do this play. You know, I'm getting a little old for this. But I really enjoyed it. I really did. And I enjoyed tonight. I don't know whether I'm going to enjoy the next 10 months, but I will.
All the fun and games begin now. Talk about the man that you play and how he fits into the show.
Herbert Werner was an interesting man. The play doesn't quite allow him the aspects that he was in life. He was a true believer to the point where he would betray some of his friends. As one of the lines in the play shows that that's true. He was an anarchist to begin with. Then he became a communist. Then he became a religious, not maniac, but he was deeply religious. He was also a great parliamentarian. He, at one time, he wrote his own speeches. He was a real manipulator, a political manipulator. He didn't like Brandt. He wanted to be Brandt, but he didn't have the charismatic or spontaneous nature that Brandt had. I thought of him in a way to be like Lyndon Johnson during the Kennedy years. But he did things like when Willy Brandt had to resign, they were both members of the Social Democratic Party, and Werner sent Brandt 42 roses because he had been in the party for 42 years. So there are interesting edges to this man. Well, you know all about us, Guillaume. Does Horst Grabert have any children?
A boy and a girl. Why?
An idle curiosity. I like to keep abreast of my colleagues' personal lives. Oh, Gauss. What about her, Gauss?
Gunther Gauss, one daughter.
One daughter. Less trouble, perhaps, than a couple of sons.
Streets are roaring, overspilling. Next, old is boring, new is thrilling. Keep exploring. Next, first the thunder, just a murmur, a little wonder. Next, then the wonder, see how pretty, going under. What a pity. Next, streams are crying, use the lotion. Next, streams are dying, mix a potion. Streams are dying, try the ocean, brilliant ocean. Next, never mind a small disaster. Who's the stronger, who's the faster? Let the pupils show the master. Next, brilliant ocean, still improving. Next, make the motion, keep it moving.
The new Broadway-bound musical, Good Vibrations, features over 30 songs by Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. The musical is directed and choreographed by John Carafa and has an original book by Richard Dresser, which tells the story of the romantic misadventures of a group of small-town teens from the East Coast who set out on a life-changing summer odyssey to the beaches of Southern California. Good Vibrations features an energetic young cast led by Kate Reinders and Chad Kimball.
Well, when I was a kid, I grew up with it like everyone else, and it feels to me like it's part of my growing up. It's part of Americana, it's part of it's classic American music. And I found out about the project about a year ago. It's about actually a year ago yesterday that we started working on the script. First word on the page, which is kind of amazing to develop a show, get it to Broadway in about 3 weeks over a year to a Broadway preview.
Now, I know you had done a workshop of this up at Vassar.
Yeah, near Stage and Film.
Talk about the structure of the show. When did it all come together, mixing book with songs and a lineup of how you wanted the songs to play in the show?
We started with outlines. We went at it from a lot of different angles. We started with outlines of songs and thought, what's a good Act 1 opener? What's a good 11 o'clock number? What's a good Act 1 finale? And then we went at it from the other angle of, all right, Rick, write a good play, and we'll see if the songs fit into it. We looked at the themes that are in the music. We also looked at all the catalog, and we thought, all right, they already wrote a musical, what is it? What are the themes, what are the storylines that are already in the songs? There's a lot of songs about one or two topics: surfing, cars, guys dumping girls. A million songs on those themes. So we did outlines, we tore it apart and put it back together 20 times, and we did a couple of readings in the spring at the Dodgers Atelier studio. We did the first act, a month later we did the second act, and we just started to figure out a formula for making it into a book musical.
Talk about the staging, the great dances you have in the show from the 60s.
Well, the dances, there's a lot of dancing in the show. It's somewhere between Moving Out and Mamma Mia in its structure. I tell the story with musical staging sometimes. In Sail on Sailor, which you saw, there's a story happening in the staging that's just about blocking, but it tells a story. There are numbers that are based on the Hullabaloo style, which is fun because Michael Bennett and Donna McKechnie were on Hullabaloo, and I've showed the kids some tapes, and that's Michael Bennett, Shindig, Hullabaloo, American Bandstand, there's those kinds of numbers. And then there's Good Vibrations, which has to be something completely unique and special. What else is there? There's Broadway show numbers. There's a Follies number. There's, I use a lot of different archetypical Broadway structures for the numbers. And there's about 30 songs in the show, so I think I've used them all.
I just barreled into the room and sold the story. I mean, I've been a huge pathological Beach Boys fan my whole life, and when I heard that the producers had the rights to the music, I decided that I was absolutely the best writer for it. And I knew that they were looking for a fictional story that was not about the Beach Boys, and so I came up with this story and went in and pitched it to them. And I later found out they wanted, they were considering me for the job anyway. But I really went. This is one that I really went after, and I really wanted to do it. And I felt like I had a very good perspective on how to serve the music, because it was very important to me that it be a celebration of Brian Wilson's music and not be a send-up and not be camp and not just be bogus nostalgia. That it really be alive, and because I think his music is really transcendent. I think it's sort of classic American music.
What is it specifically? I mean, when you were originally turned on to the music, and now generation after generation, 11-year-old kids are turned on to this music. What is it specifically?
I think that there's a tremendous sense of yearning in the music. I grew up in New England, and when, there are 3 feet of snow in February, and there are these wonderful, brilliant, extraordinary songs about the beach and girls and surfing and everything. It's like a world, it's the promised land. It's just what, we dream of, you dream about it, and there's something that's so, speaks so much to the spirit. There's something very hopeful about the music, and I think that's a lot of what it is.
Makes me realize project, came about. I was up at Vassar this summer at New York Station Film doing a show called Nerds, and they were all here working on it, and so I saw it up there and liked it, and then auditions came around and I went in, and I think, since I had seen it, I had a little bit idea of what it was and who I thought Caroline could be, and luckily it all worked out that I'm here and I'm part of it now and having a great time.
Well, let's talk about Caroline. What kind of girl is she and how does she fit into the plot?
Caroline, okay, the kind of girl she is kind of or a lot like me, in that, she's her own person in high school, and she's smart and she's involved in a lot of things, but she's not super popular, but it's not like she's a super outsider loser either. She's involved in a lot of different things. Anyway, but of course she's in love with the cutest, most popular guy, as I was too, and he didn't know she was alive, and so that's what happens. We start at the end of their high school where they graduate, and because she was valedictorian, she has this amazing car, and the cool guys decide they want to go to California, and they think, oh, we don't have a car, we'd love to go in style, how could we make that happen? And so Bobby pretends to like Caroline, and of course it's a dream come true for her. So that's how it starts, and I don't want to tell you how it ends.
My name's play Bobby, and he's kind of an angst-ridden teen living in a small town on the East Coast, and he's just got to get the heck out to the West Coast, live that California lifestyle. They go and steal a surfboard, hoping that they'll be the hip guys that they are at school. They will transform out to California as well. So,
well, talk about what the experience has been like working on this project.
It's been amazing. To work on Beach Boys music has just been absolutely incredible. One of the greatest songwriters of all time, and Brian Wilson. And I've been lucky enough to work on this project since its first reading. So to see the transformation of the show from this, never been heard before project to what it's become today on the stage, it's just been an unbelievable experience.
When were you first aware of Beach Boys music?
Oh, when I was a little kid, we'd clean the house, listening to the oldie station. The Beach Boys were always on. My grandma's a huge fan of the Beach Boys. So I've grown up with the music and loved it. Yeah.
Play Dean, who's one of the surfers. Jan and Dean are the two surfer dudes that when you get to California, you meet them. And the three guys who come from the high school, maybe on the East Coast, that's Bobby, Dave, and Eddie. They sort of think they're tough guys, and they think they're cool. And when they get to California, they see sort of that what's perceived as cool is a little bit different. It's not about being tough or being, cooler than thou, but it's just about being cool with yourself, and that's sort of the role that I play with Jan in California.
Why do you think this show is so right for audiences now?
I think it's a great show. It teaches a lot about... I think it's a good time for audiences to see stuff like this. I think we're in a tough time in the country. We're in a tough time economically in terms of what's happening in America, in the world. And I think it's a great message that the show brings. I think audiences will see that this show goes beyond just the music of the Beach Boys. The story that we've incorporated is really a wonderful story. And it teaches about changing for the better, changing yourself to be comfortable with who you are, and also to accept others for what they are, which I think is a big, is really going to be a wonderful thing for audiences to see these days.
My nephew, all this new generation loves the Beach Boys. What was it specifically that turned you on? Was it the harmonies? What was it?
I think it's just quintessentially young music, and speaks to what's happening in young people's lives. And I know that the beach and all the sentiment that's in the songs just really speaks to young people, I think.
There's no angst in these songs. It's really all about having fun and finding yourself, right?
It's true. And some of their later songs, which we sing in the second act, like Sail on Sailor and Sloop John B., those songs kind of embody a little bit of an angst, but those came later. And these first songs, Fun, 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 and California Girls, and all these songs that are in the first act are really kind of the harbinger songs of the generation and the fun of the generation and the baby boomers, and so yeah, it's a lot of fun to sing, actually, and even more fun to listen to. So it's nice to sit off stage and hear some of the other stuff. So
now talk about the role that you play and how he fits into the story.
I play Randy in the second act, and actually in the first act there are 5 guys. We make up the quintet, and we kind of narrate around what what Dave and Eddie and what's his name, Bobby are doing in the beginning, and we kind of narrate around them and entice them to come to California. And then once we get to California, we're a tribe of surfers, and I play Randy, just one of the surf guys who is in love with Marcella, and I try and woo her with my French, what little French I know.